Okay, thanks for bearing with us. If you've been waiting patiently, we've been going through some technical. Apologize for that. So, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and pick it up with the what we will talk about today slide. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the current progress. Right, this program is set up as kind of a guide or a roadmap to get you prepared to take the exam, the Associate Cloud Engineer exam, within a certain time frame, right? With an end date, specific end date in mind, right? And so we'll look at the roadmap and see just how far along the course we are, and what we can expect in the next couple of weeks. After that, we'll go through the certification FAQ. As you, for those who may not know, FAQ is frequently asked questions, and those are questions that we typically get as we're going through the different kickstarts for the different exams. We've noticed some trends and around the typical questions that we hear, so we'll try to head those off in that section. After that, we'll talk about next steps beyond what is the next week hold in store for me, right? What are the next steps? How do I go ahead and plant a flag in the sand at some point in the future and work against that as my goal? And then we'll jump to some Q&A. Some of those questions I can already tell you are answered in the FAQ, but others may not. So certainly, if you have questions along the way, pop them into the Q&A section, and we will address those as we get to them. So, current progress. And then we have a roadmap. So, we are in week 3 of the 6-week program. In the first week, you should have gone through the GCP fundamentals, right? The core fundamentals, core infrastructure, and that's an on-demand Coursera course. For those of you who don't know what Coursera is, maybe you've not gotten to the materials yet. Coursera is a massive online classroom, and those are pre-recorded sessions, right, where you can go through, and there are some Q&A along the way, some questions along the way to ensure that you are understanding and digesting the material that you've just gone over, and it has the added benefit of making sure that you're still engaged with the material. That's about 10 hours, give or take. My personal experience is that it takes far fewer hours than the total allotted time, but your experience may vary. It may take you the full 10 hours. It may take you 15 hours. I don't know. So in week 1, you should have also completed the GCP Essentials Hands-On Lab, and that is approximately 3 hours worth. So that's most likely delivered via Quick Labs, and then so that actually gets you then the hands-on kind of exercises to help you understand where to kind of point and click and where to go in the console to do the things with the computers. An optional activity for week 1 was GCP Fundamentals for AWS Professional. That's also an on-demand course via Coursera, one that I know that in speaking with a lot of test takers, they've gotten a lot of value out of. Because let's be frank, AWS has been in the cloud space for a lot longer than GCP, and because of that, there's more familiarity with their cloud. That said, there is a reason that Google is taking on its venture into the cloud, and the traction that we're seeing there. So this helps you take the knowledge that you may have for another cloud provider and kind of do okay, if it was this thing, or if this particular service was called XYZ on this particular cloud provider, well, now on GCP, it does kind of the same thing, does some things a lot better, does some things not as great, and it's called ABC, right? Not XYZ. So that's why you want to take that. Week 2, last week, you should have done another Coursera course. This one would have been the Essential Cloud Infrastructure Foundation. Again, the guidance on that is about 10 hours. Your mileage may vary. And fast forward now, of course, then to week 3, where we find ourselves with the live office hour. So this week, you should be hopefully have started your Coursera course, Essential Cloud Infrastructure Core Services, guidance around that. Again, 12 hours, your mileage may vary. In the next couple weeks, you have another handful of Coursera courses. Next week is Cloud Infrastructure Scaling and Automation. And then week 5 has Containers and Services, as well as another prep course for the actual exam. So some of these, given that we have multiple exams, both within the, I guess I would call it the certification ecosystem for Google Cloud, some of these courses you will see are also recommended reading for other exams. So if you go through them now and you're using the Associate Cloud Engineer exam as kind of your first step in, or your first foray into GCP certification, you will save time on your subsequent exams because you'll be able to, kind of fast forward through those or listen to them at, 1.25 or 1.5x speed rather than at 1.0 speed. So that speed being the modulation that you can add to, either increase or decrease the velocity at which the speaker is, speaking. So, all right, so that's kind of the roadmap, right? That gives you an overview of the current progress, where we are and what we have to come in the next couple of weeks. So, with that, we will jump onto the certification FAQ. So, given I mentioned just a minute ago that there are a number of exams within the Google Cloud certification ecosystem. And they break down kind of into two groups, right? Two different families, so or two main branches, however you want to perceive this. So there's the excuse me, let me find my page here. There are the professional certifications, and then there's the associate certifications. The associate certifications is kind of the focus of for this exam, right? The Associate Cloud Engineer. And so let's describe what that is in order to disambiguate it from the professional certification. So what is the associate certification? It's an associate level certification is a job task-based certification focused on core Google Cloud platform technology. It's a great starting point for those who may be new to cloud in general, or those who are new to GCP, right? And as I mentioned before, or I alluded to before, this can be used as kind of a stepping stone to the professional level certifications. The guidance around the experience that you should have going into this exam is about 6 months of hands-on with GCP. So the other type of certification we have are professional certifications, and those are job role based, right? The difference there being the associate certifications are job task based, and then that the professional certifications are job role based. And the professional certifications assess advanced design and implementation skills developed through a lot of hands-on experience, through years of hands-on experience. So that gives you some preview into what the recommended experience is for the professional certifications. That recommended, or the guidance there, is that you should have about three or more years of industry experience, and with that, including a year of design and managing solutions on GCP. So really, if I were to kind of do the TLDR, the too long didn't read, its associate certifications are how do I do the things, how do I do the tasks verb-based, and then the professional certification is really more of like the advanced design implementation skills, less of the how do I launch a Cloud SQL instance kind of thing. So within each of those, right, families, we have on the associate certification, as you see here on the slide, the Associate Cloud Engineer, as we mentioned before. The next level, or the next certification that would, I guess, follow after this within the professional certification branch or family is the Professional Cloud Architect exam. So you can use, use the ACE, the ACE, or the Associate Cloud Engineer as kind of your first foray. You're getting your toes wet, understanding what we look for when we do when we put together these exams, and then moving on to the professional cloud architect. So that's enough of that slide. And disambiguating really kind of the two tracks that or the two families that we have for our certifications, as well as then what this can be used as a stepping stone to get you to in the future. So the first FAQ, frequently asked question. How long is a Google Cloud certification valid? Answer, unfortunately, this isn't a build slide, so you get the answer right away. So it's 2 years from the day that you get certified. So if you get your certification, or you take the exam tomorrow, you pass the exam, you go and you celebrate, well, you have, as of tomorrow, then you will have 1 day less of that 2 year remaining. So yeah, it's a 2 year certification, and they definitely do expire. I've actually have been certified long enough that I've seen some of my exams expire and had to then retake the exam to recertify. So what happens if I don't pass an exam? You can take it again. You can take it as many times as you like. However, for each non-pass that you have a certain time frame that you have to wait before you're able to retake the exam. What we're trying to get around here is someone taking the exam 10 times in a row, and on the 10th time they get it simply by virtue of having kind of memorized all of the questions and figuring out what the answer is. So that's part of what this gets around. The other thing is ensuring that you have sufficient time to actually go back and work on the things that you may have had questions around, right? Do some research, do some reading, and maybe some hands-on exercises, and then come back, take the exam again. So after your first attempt, then, and if you don't pass, then you have to wait 14 days. If you take the exam a second time and you don't pass that second time, you have to wait 60 days before you take it the third time. If after that third time you are not able to pass the exam, then you are asked to wait a year before you take it again. And again, the reason that we do that is to avoid some, let's just call them bad practices that some people might want to go down or implement. And the other is really to afford you the time to go back, really focus on the things that you had or that you were not sure on, and skill up before you come back and take the exam. So the next question is, why don't I receive my score or any feedback when I submit my exam? It's certainly one of I like a percentage grade, right? I like to see, hey, I did 98% well, or I did just 70.3% well. What was it? Where was I? At the end of this exam, you get either a pass or a fail. And we don't give you any feedback as to how you did. And the reason for that is it's really, the exams aren't designed to be diagnostic, right? They're designed to determine only whether or not an individual meets the minimum passing standard. They aren't designed to really kind of spread people out on a scale of ability, rather really to validate whether you pass the minimum standard. So, the other thing is that numeric scores really aren't meaningful for the exam or for the examinee, and there can be a lot of misinterpretation if you go and you deliver that numeric score. So, next question: why don't I receive section feedback on my exam? Well, this kind of feeds into it's just part of, I think, the previous question, and it's I think an obvious precursor or an obvious follow-on to the question that we just talked about. So it's not meaningful. It can be misleading, kind of like we talked about, right? We recognize that some other exam providers do provide a feedback section for their exams. Certainly, I've taken exams for from other vendors and received a report that says, hey, you did great on this one thing, but you didn't do so great on these other sections. However, you passed, so great, there you go. We don't do that. We say you either passed or you didn't. They're not, again, Our exams are not Our exams are not designed to diagnose any strengths or weaknesses. The exam sections are fairly broad topic categories, and the range of specific questions that you receive for any section in a single exam is fairly narrow by comparison. So based on the limited amount of data, there really isn't meaningful feedback that we can responsibly provide you. So all of that to say, what we tell you may be misinterpreted, and we don't want that. So best thing is to be as well prepared as you can for the entire test across all subjects that are going to be covered on the exam, provided the guidance that's in the study guide, and prepare with using that. So next question is the data from my certification exam shared? So when handling the information that we collect and process during participation in the exam, we follow very strict guidelines, and you can find those guidelines in our data sharing policy for Google Cloud certification and in Google's privacy policy. So if you're registered using a partner email, whether or not you passed or failed, whether you passed or whether you failed, may be visible to your employer. It might be, it might not be. There is no broad paintbrush that we can apply to that, yes or no. So it depends. The answer is, because I'm a customer engineer, that's my favorite answer. It depends. So there you go. If you have questions, more to the point, about how your exam data is shared or whether it's shared, you can follow up and take a look at our data sharing policy for Google Cloud certifications, as well as Google's privacy policy. Next, is there a limit to the number of times that I can take a practice exam? A practice exam, right? Not the actual exam, the practice exam. No, you can take the practice exams as many times as you like. It's just that straightforward. Next question, does the practice exam cover all of the content on the certification exams? So the common practice exam contains about 20 questions, and those are going to familiarize you with the question types and the content that you may encounter on the certification exam. The certification exam is longer than the practice exam, and it will cover a wider range of topics compared to the practice exam. So I mentioned, I really need to stop overusing the word so. A full list of topics that you will be tested on can be found in the exam guide. How do I find the exam guide? Well, I'm glad you asked. Self. In order to find the exam guide, what you can do is you can go to open up your favorite browser of choice. So after you've opened up Chrome, you type in the address bar cloud.google.com/certification. That will take you to a kind of a splash page that tells you kind of why you should be why you should consider the exam, what you get out of the certifications. And then we go into the different certification families or branches. The top listed is the associate certification. The first exam listed under that, the only exam listed under that, in fact, is the associate cloud engineer. Below that, there is a register link. So register to take the exam. I'll get to that in a few minutes. And then there's the details link. And this is the one that we want to look at for right now. That's the one we want to click. So if you click on the details link, it takes you over to a new page, which is if you're keen on typing that's into the URL, you're more than welcome to cloud.google.com/certification/cloud-engineer. And that actually then provides you a lot of the specific details about this exam. Again, why you should take it, and then a bit of information around the exam, how long it is, what the registration fee is. More to come on that one too. which languages the exam is available in, the exam format, whether you have to go to a testing center in order to take the exam, or if you can just take it from the comfort of your own home office. Whether or not there are any prerequisites, and then guidance on the recommended experience. Over on the left, you'll see that there's, all these things that I'm talking about are kind of in the exam overview. On the left, there are other links to the exam guide and the aforementioned practice exam. So if we click on the exam guide link, we fast forward to the exam guide as it should be, and that provides you a numbered list of the high level topics that are covered, right? Meaning, like, number one, setting up a cloud solution environment. Number two, planning and configuring a cloud solution. Each of these will also have sub-bullets or subsections. So number one has a total of 3 subsections, each with their own bullets. And section 2, planning and configuring a cloud solution, has 4 sections. Each of those also have their sub-bullets. So it's pretty prescriptive in terms of what you need to study or prepare before taking the exam. All right, man, that was a digression like none other. So we'll go back to the Q&A and we'll go on to the next question. Does the practice exam contain current test questions? No. Pretty straightforward. Next question is, if I do well on the practice exam, will I pass the certification exam? There are no guarantees in life. There are very few guarantees in life. Certainly passing the practice exam is not a guarantee that you will pass the certification exam. What it is a good indication of whether you will pass or not. So if you find that the content in the practice exams is really easy, it's a good indication that you are ready to take a run or make an attempt of the actual certification exam. I'll go ahead and cover off on a couple of other questions that I am used to seeing in the Q&A section for other exams that we do, or that for other exam kickstarts that we do. Specifically, how long is the test? How many questions? Although that answer is not in the Q&A. All right. So how long do you have to take the test? You have 2 hours to take the exam. If memory serves me correct, you have, I think, 50 questions. That's 50 questions to do in that 2-hour time frame. I may be off by 10, so definitely check that. The registration fee, more to come on that one. The languages that this exam is available in. So this exam, the Associate Cloud Engineer exam, is available in English, Japanese, Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, and Indonesian. So 7 total languages available for this specific exam. The reason that I kind of highlight the fact that it's for this particular exam is that other exams are only available in a smaller number of languages. So depending on which you're going to take, you want to check that out if you're not going to take it in, or depending on what your preference is for taking the exam. What is the exam format? So multiple choice and multiple select are the 2 types of questions that we ask. Multiple choice, meaning that there is a question, and typically you have options A, B, C, D, and E. Sometimes E, sometimes just A, B, C, and D. And your answer will be, the best answer will be in one of those, and only one of those answers. So you're choosing one answer out of 4 or 5. That's the multiple choice. The multiple select is slightly different, where of course you have your question, but then you have A, B, C, D, E, different answers, and of those you will select some of them. So maybe 2, maybe 3, some number of those items in the answer set will be the correct answer set. And those, instead of having a radio button for those questions, you're going to have a checkbox. What I've seen on the exam is that it also will say, choose 2, choose 3, choose 4, whatever. And that will give you an indication of, if I have 5 checkboxes. How many of these should I be checking? There you go. So that's what multiple select is. The other thing that this then obviously doesn't talk about or doesn't mention is that this is not necessarily like a coding test, right? We're not going to ask you exactly what to open up a terminal window and then correctly type the command to make a bucket in Google Cloud Storage. That it's not that we Google do not put together those kinds of test questions, or at least they certainly don't make it to the exam. So if you know what the things are that you need to do and how to do those in the console, that's more than enough. Again, don't focus on knowing every single command line command and what all of the flags are and whether the -E is uppercase or lowercase. So put your mind at ease there. Okay. So those are a couple of the things that, again, that I typically see in the question and answer section, which are not actually slides here. So let's talk about what are the next steps? Where do we go from here? We looked at the roadmap earlier and we saw that we have a couple more weeks of Coursera as well as Quick Labs that we can use. The Coursera, of course, for the classroom type learning, the Coursera being for the hands-on type exercises. In order to stay on track over the next couple weeks, you'll, if you haven't done so already, certainly start. Or if you've already started, then go ahead and complete the Essential Cloud Infrastructure Core Services Coursera course. And then next week, you'll be tasked with starting and completing the Elastic Cloud Infrastructure Scaling and Automation course. Good times, good times. Moving on from that, we'll go to the Q&A. And so for that, I'll look at the Q&A that we have coming in from our live studio audience. Well, live audience. No, I'm in a studio. I don't know about anybody else. So let's see here. Question number 1, and I'll omit any names for number 1, privacy, and number 2, so I don't butcher anyone's name. The first question is this exam or certification first attempt complimentary with this Coursera course? As you said, my employer may see my score. Well, the exam is, you do get an exam voucher for the cost of the exam. That cost, if you were to pay out of pocket, would be $125 plus tax where applicable. So you get a voucher which covers that, assuming that you complete all of the material by November 22nd. So in that sense, then yes, the first attempt would be complimentary. Again, assuming you meet the criteria. And then the part about your, I did say your employer may see your score. Yes, they might. That whether or not they actually do depends on the agreement with your employer, which I don't have access to. So next question. Hope that answers your question. Next, we will go to a question that says, will we be able to get a voucher for the exam after we complete the Coursera course? Man, it's like I saw this coming. So yes, as I just discussed, and this question came in like 40 minutes ago. So just not making fun of anyone or anything like that. So not to make anyone feel bad. Yeah. If you finish the exam, if you finish the preparation materials, the hands-on labs, the Coursera, all of those good things by November 22nd, then you do get an exam voucher. The next question is, can we also access the course even if we don't finish the assignment learnings in the same week? Yes. So you can, although I recommend against it, you could theoretically wait until week 6 to do all of this, right? You could just say, you know what, I know that I'm on a big project right now, but I'm gonna finish it in 5 weeks, and I'm gonna take that 6th week then, and I'm gonna do all of this studying. I'm gonna cram it in, and then I'm gonna take the exam. And by the way, meet that November 22nd deadline. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. Different people work different ways. And so if that works for you, awesome. The point being here that the preparation material will be available. All the preparation material will be available at least for the duration of the Kickstart focus, or the Kickstart schedule, right? And that being the 6 weeks. So there you go on that. Let's see. Do we have any other questions in the Q&A? I don't see any. So we'll hang on for just a few more minutes here and see if any other questions come in. We do have another question that just came in, hot off the press. If I had one of those sound machines, I would make the kind of the telegraphing sound. Telegraph for everyone who's tells you how old I am. There you go. Okay. So can I give both cloud engineer and architect exam if I complete the course before November 22nd? So the voucher that you receive for completing the materials by November 22nd is for the associate cloud engineer. I'm going to have to double check whether that's actually tied to the specific exam or if you can use it for any other Google Cloud exams. The other thing that I would mention, however, is that the associate cloud engineer and its recommended material is, I would call it a subset of the materials for the professional cloud architect. So, you may, given the materials in this 6-week session, you may be able to pass the associate cloud engineer, but there are a lot of other materials that you would want to review ahead of the architect exam. So you can use the exam for a single, you can use the voucher for a single exam or test, whether it's tied to ACE, the associate cloud engineer, or if you can use it on the professional cloud architect. I'm going to have to double check. Regardless of that, the thing that I really want to highlight here is that the materials in this 6-week session are for the associate cloud engineer, and they are a subset of the materials for the architect exam. Okay, next question. Is this course sufficient preparation for the associate professional architect exam? So there are two different exams. One is called the associate cloud engineer, and that is what the materials in this 6-week program are designed to prepare you for. So that's the associate cloud engineer, the associate level. The professional certifications, which have different guidance on the recommended experience that you should have going into the exam. The professional cloud architect exam, which falls within the professional certification family or branch, whatever you want to call it, is a superset, right? There are more things in the there are more things to cover. There's more study material to cover for that exam. So I would recommend against taking the materials in this 6-week course and trying to pass the professional architect exam. As I mentioned, I did mention before that some of these courses are reused for other certifications. So you may be able to save some time in terms of how long it takes you to get through the material the second time. By the way, if you're going to take the next step, I do the next step and go with the professional certification. I would recommend, especially if it's been some time, go back, review the material for the Coursera course. Even if you reviewed the material initially for the associate cloud engineer, if you're going to go forward with the professional cloud architect, go back, review the material, refresh it, right? Load it back into cache, whatever analogy you want to apply there. Next question, is there a practice exam somewhere? Absolutely there is. So that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. So if you open your browser of choice and you go to the URL bar or the address bar, you enter in cloud.google.com, cloud.google.com/certification. From there, you will see that's kind of the landing page for all of the different certification types. You'll see that the first certification family or branch that's listed is associate certifications. The one and only exam that you will find listed under the associate certification family is the associate cloud engineer. And that then describes what the test is about or the exam is about. Within that, you'll see a register link and a details link. Click on the details link, and that takes you to another page that is specific to this exam. So we go from splash page, the overview page for all of our exams, and to the page that is specific to this exam, the Associate Cloud Engineer. If you're typing into your URL bar or you're following along in class, that's cloud.google.com/certification/cloud- or dash engineer. And so then that page is specific to this test. It tells you a bit about what we're going to be looking for, a little bit about the exam itself, the duration in terms of length, the cost, the languages, and then there are exam guides. The exam guide can, if you're scrolling down just the first page that you get to, then you eventually get to it after the About section. Or if you look over to the left, there's a legend or a shortcuts, some shortcuts over on the left, which take you either to the exam overview or to the exam guide, which details what materials you should be familiar with, what concepts you should be familiar with, what tasks you should be familiar with before going into the exam. And the next link after that, right? So we go exam overview, exam guide, and then there's practice exam below that. And there's no limit to the number of times that you can take the practice exam. There's no time limit for the practice exam either. We recommend, however, that you complete the practice exam in 45 minutes or less. Other things to note are that you can't save your progress. So if you start taking the practice test and you have to close the window for whatever reason, you want to come back to it later, well, you have to restart the entire thing. If you close the practice exam window, you have to start from the beginning. Languages that the practice exam are available in are English, Japanese, Spanish, Portuguese, French, and German. So that is at least one fewer language than the exam itself. For those of you who have been following along with the class, right? So Indonesian was another language that the actual exam is available in, but unfortunately the practice exam is not available, it seems, in Indonesian. So there you go with that. Hopefully that answers that question. Missed the meeting. Is it recorded somewhere? I'm going to have to double check on that and then paste the link on that. So next question is, will Coursera access for this GCP? I think it's around the duration of access for the guide. So the guide itself it lives until we replace it with something else. So the exam guide that you find on our cloud.google.com certification page is there until and it will be static until we refresh the exam. I don't have any indication of when that will be. So there's that. I don't know. So there's part B of this question is, or will it expire in some time? I don't know how often or what the refresh schedule is for these exams. So it's good until it's not, unfortunately, is the answer I have to give you. Next question is, will we be able to keep access to the course after completion? So yeah, if you need to if you go through, for example, the week 1 material in week 1, and then after you're done at week 6, you want to go back and do a review of everything, then yes, you can go back and you can review all of the material that you had previously completed to brush up or get clarity on some materials that maybe weren't as clear or that you had subsequent questions on. So yeah, all of the material will be available, and you can retake the Coursera courses at least during the 6-week program that we have for the Associate Cloud Engineer Kickstart. So that takes us to all of that completes all of the questions that we have in the Q&A. I'm just scrolling down here, live time, IRL, in real time, to see if we have any other questions. I do see a question that I missed that came in 10 minutes ago that asked, will access to the course be revoked after completion? And I think that's essentially the same question as we just answered, which was, we'll be able to keep access to the course after completion. Yeah, yes, and at least for the duration of the 6-week Kickstart is the answer for that. With that, we've got 2 short minutes left, probably more like a minute and a half. So if there are any last-minute questions, please submit. Otherwise, I'll hang on for just a few more seconds. And if nothing else, thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. I know that we had some technical difficulties at the start or the beginning of the office hours. So for those of you who hung in, thanks for hanging in, and thanks for all of your great questions. If you have any other questions, certainly put them. Feel free to post them in the community board. With that, I'll go ahead and sign off. Again, have a great afternoon. Have a great rest of your week, and happy studying.